Welcome to the Friday edition of Juan's World, and today's video is the second part of a two-part series on travel which I began last Friday, and you can check up the URL of last Friday's if you want to catch up on that. I'll put it down in the description. What I was talking about last time was different ways in which people travel, and mostly concerned about the inherent problems, or I don't know exactly what you'd describe them as, difficulties, what have you, of tourism. There's of sort of going to various places like Paris and taking a picture of the Eiffel Tower, or Rome and the Colosseum, or what have you, just like checking off, okay, I've done that, I've seen that, take my pictures, and then go on back home. Well, this last weekend was my birthday, and on my birthday I like to travel if I can. During COVID I couldn't, but before that I used to do a lot of traveling on my birthdays, and last year I picked it up. I went to Angkor for a particular purpose, and last weekend I went to Kampot, which is a relatively small, relatively sleepy town on the south coast of Cambodia. I'd never been there before, heard about it a fair amount, wanted to go see what it was like. And so here's my report. And I'll start by saying that I was mostly a tourist, but then I kind of changed it up on the last day. So let's get into it. Right. Well, first I took a bus from Phnom Penh to Kampot last Friday. The day I posted the previous video. It was one of those really annoying bus rides. I had to go from my apartment to an office of the company, Giant Ibis, at 7 o'clock. I was supposed to arrive there, but because of the traffic here, I took a tuk-tuk at about 6 o'clock and got there about 20 to 7, something like that. Then you sit around until they're ready to have you, and then they pile you onto a bus and take you up to a terminal where you get off the bus that you're on and onto the bus that is the one that's going to take you to your destination. So we left at 8 o'clock from the terminal, and by around 8:45, because of the absolutely dense traffic, we were heading towards the southern highway that was going to take us south to Kampot, and past my apartment. So in 2.5 hours I had gone from my apartment back to my apartment and then on. And so we finally left the city limits of Phnom Penh, I'm guessing at around 9 o'clock. And then it took us about 3 hours to get to Kampot, which is typical. So we got there a little before 12 o'clock. And I had arranged to stay at what you can call a resort rather than a hotel, because where I was staying was actually in a bungalow on a river with several bungalows along the river, each with its own balcony and its own access to a river walk that you could go on and so forth. And as I'm talking here, you'll start me seeing pictures of my place where I was staying and so forth. Well, the place where I was staying was bigger than my apartment in Phnom Penh. It didn't have a full kitchen, but it did have a kitchen workspace, a sink, a microwave, electric kettle. So like fairly decent prep. Dining table and chairs set for two. Then my bedroom and the balcony, and on the balcony was the view of the river. So a really extraordinary place. About 7 kilometers north of the center of Kampot, on a fairly broken down dirt road. But eventually I did get around to borrowing a bicycle and going down into the center by bike. Before that, I was relying on the drivers of the hotel to take me around if I needed to get places. But the first day I just went down into the town to look around. And this is where the sort of tourist versus traveler thing gets kind of interesting, because I was on my lookout for the feel of the place. Like, how does it feel to live in this town? Well, first of all, it's very quiet in comparison with Phnom Penh. It's also very small. I don't have to spend a lot of time worrying about how to get across the street because there isn't a lot of traffic. No pagodas. That was perhaps to me the most extraordinary thing. I can't walk 5 minutes in Phnom Penh anywhere in the center without bumping into a pagoda. And sometimes there are 2 or 3 clustered like all together. There were none. I mean, I wandered around. I wandered up and down the river. I looked for a little supermarket so that I could get a few odds and ends to take back to the bungalow where I was staying, so that I'd have like instant noodles and some vegetables and some fruit. Forgot that I wanted a chocolate bar, didn't get one because I wasn't thinking, and so on. But just try to get the feel of the place, and it was extraordinary in several ways. One of them was that there were a lot of tourists there, and I'm talking about like European-looking tourists. I mean, I don't know where they actually came from, but they looked, and later I found out that like people that I met were from Germany and Switzerland and the Czech Republic and so forth. So there were a lot of them. And you don't see that in Phnom Penh. You see Chinese foreigners, tourists and business people and so forth, but you don't see a lot of Europeans. I saw a lot of European faces. Among the Khmer faces too. And quite a fair bit of French colonial architecture, which is also less common in Phnom Penh. It seemed like a bit of a throwback in time, but nowhere where I really wanted to just sort of poke my nose and say, what's this all about? So I went back to the bungalow later, before sunset. And then the next day, and the day after that, I had tours planned. There's a kind of clearinghouse agency called Viator that online advertises day trips that you can take from various places, and I had booked two. The next day, my main interest was going up what's called Bakor Mountain. And I discovered as I went up later that next day that Bakor means the hump on the back of a water buffalo in Khmer. So, and in fact, the whole range of mountains that Bakor is on is called the Elephant Mountains, Damrai. And they're all considered to be sacred to the Khmer people. And Bakor is the tallest, and in fact is the second tallest mountain in Cambodia. I don't remember, 1,000 and something meters high. So we did this tour. Right? So I'm basically being a tourist, because you know, like just when you go to Paris, you have to see the Eiffel Tower. When you go to Kampot, you have to go up Bokor Mountain. So up I went, and at the base, the driver of the tuk-tuk who was taking us up got some bananas, and he said, "Well, we're gonna, you know, we'll see some monkeys along the way. You can give them the bananas." And we began just going up. And the road is very windy, lots of hairpin turns, steep and slow. But we made it pretty much up to the top. Around halfway, there were monkeys playing in the middle of the street, so we threw them some bananas, and they all had a good time and took some photographs of them, and then up to the top. And it turns out that until the early part of the 20th century, there was no way to get up to the top of the mountain except just doing usual mountaineering stuff, because it was covered in dense rainforest. And the rainforest had monkeys and tigers and various other wildlife. And the French colonial administration had decided that it was a good holiday spot. And so using semi-enforced labor had built the road all the way to the top. And that allowed them to build resorts at the top. And it also allowed the king of Cambodia at the time to build his own resort, which he did. And then subsequently they built a Buddhist temple, and also a shrine to a woman whose Khmer name is it basically means like black granny. It's a funny tale about a woman who brings good luck. And there's a shrine to her there. And then eventually you'll get around to going to the original hotel that was built there, which was eventually decommissioned and then recommissioned, and is actually active as a hotel right now, although it's a very, very expensive place to go. The cheapest room is $200 a night, and the most expensive room is $2,000 a night. Can't quite understand why anyone would want to spend $2,000 a night at what is essentially an old, not very interesting hotel, but there it is. So we did that. That took the bulk of the morning. It should have taken longer, but this was actually my birthday itself, and I was quite happy to get down off the mountain and go and have lunch. The temperature gradients were very interesting. That's probably the part that most interested the French colonial government at the time. That is, you know, when you're at ground level, temperatures are around 34, 35 degrees centigrade. But as you ascend up to the summit, you're getting down to around 25 degrees centigrade. It's very pleasant, cool weather, very nice. So a nice, vacation spot. So that was my birthday. That was day one. And in the afternoon, I didn't have much to do. I sorted out my photos. I did have lunch in town. I had a really nice traditional Khmer soup, very tasty and very enjoyable. But that was the end of that day. And then the next day, I had a tour planned that is usually called the Salt and Pepper Tour, because the first thing you do is you go to the salt flats, where they show you how they turn seawater into salt, and you can see it here. And then the next stop is an 8th century Hindu shrine in a cave not far from where the salt flats are. And that was intriguing, because Cambodia used to be a Hindu country before it became Buddhist. But when Angkor was first founded, the country was Hindu, but the kings fairly early on in the development of Angkor as a city converted to Buddhism, and all the shrines became converted to Buddhism as well. But this cave shrine was Hindu. And you can see, it was a bit of a climb to get up to the cave and then down into it. And at 73 years old, I was beginning to feel my age. But it was curious. And then the last thing was a visit to what's called La Plantation, the plantation, which is a pepper farm. And I was interested in that too, because Kampot pepper is world famous. It's got a very particular savor, and it's quite delightful. And it comes in 3 colors. You can get it in red, white, or black. And it's available in the markets where I live, and I use it all the time, and use it as presents and various other things as well. So I was interested to go to this place, but I thought it was just going to be our guide, kind of showing us around. But it was in fact this big commercial enterprise, and we had to sit and wait until enough people were there, and then the guide, who was actually an employee of the La Plantation, took us around, and he gave us this whole spiel about how the pepper grows, the history of pepper production in Cambodia, how they make the red and the white and the black and green, as it happens, all from the same plant, but at different stages of maturity of the pepper seed itself. And so, I mean, that was kind of interesting, and was worth it. But then there was an awful lot of stuff back at the base of tasting, and I knew what this was all about. Okay, so you taste what the black, white, and red are like. Well, I knew that. I didn't need to test that. I'm well aware of Kampot peppers. And then they had, pepper mixed with galangal, and pepper mixed with curry, and pepper mixed with chai tea, and so on. And not interested. I mean, this is pure tourist stuff. This is a business catering to foreigners who don't know anything about Kampot pepper, don't know anything about Cambodia. They're just like sampling, and of course they're sampling these tastes because the company is going to sell various kinds of pepper with chai tea, pepper with galangal, pepper with curry, and so you're going to taste them and say, oh yeah, I like that, I'll take it. Well, I'm not interested in that because I know how to cook. So I took photographs and watched people do it. But that was like day one and day two, as I call them. It's like two tours for tourists doing tourist things. But then on my last day, I didn't have a professional tour. I just asked the resort to lend me a bicycle. And they had one that wasn't too bad. It was actually a lot worse than I thought because its gears didn't work and the back brake didn't work. But it was sort of okay. It was okay enough. And what I had done is I had looked at the map and I said, look, there's this particular pagoda that looks really interesting to me. It's called Wat Ang Srei Prei Manchia. And it just seems like an interesting place to visit. So it's about 8 kilometers from my resort and it looks flat, so I think we'll be all right. I'm just going to head that way, and I've got my GPS set up on my smartphone so that I won't get too lost. I did actually get fairly well lost towards the end, but mostly okay. And set out. And as I set out, I was about to take a left turn, only about 3 kilometers from the resort, and there's a big archway on the road. Now, these archways that usually have a Buddha or some kind of religious symbol on them are indications that if you go through them and keep going, you'll reach a pagoda. No telling how far you have to go, but there's a pagoda somewhere. So I set out, and there it was. And it was an interesting one, very different from the pagodas that I'm used to in Phnom Penh, but with similarities. Took some photographs, kept back on the road, and another maybe 4 kilometers away, another pagoda. So went in there. And this one was really interesting to me because they were just setting up for Khmer New Year. Khmer New Year is going to come up. April 15th is the main day, but it's 3 days. So it'll be April 14th, 15th, and 16th. But they set up bunting and stars and various things, same as in the parking lot of my apartment building. And there were monks on scaffolding, busy doing that, and they were really, I think, quite happy to see me, because they don't get tourists. Like the tourists go to the Salt Flats plantation up Bakor Mountain, but they don't get on a bicycle and just wander off east from Kampot to find pagodas. They never see foreigners, and so there I was with my camera, and they were all smiling, and they, who are you? What are you doing here? Blah blah blah. It was really pleasant, not tourist at all, and there was an interesting water feature that I photographed, and some other aspects of the pagoda that I photographed, and then I went on to Ang Srei Prei, which is where I was headed as my main goal, and it was remarkable. And the first thing I noticed, I got fairly close. It was again, I had to get off the main highway through an archway, and then just keep going. But this was, I think it was about 2.5 kilometers from the main road, and I wasn't always sure where I was going. But when I got close, I could hear music, and it wasn't actually people playing. There had been people playing back up on Bakor Mountain, which I've shown you previously here, but this was just a tape recording of some sort, digital recording, I guess, these days. But it was playing pretty loud, and you could hear it 100 meters or so from the entrance. So when I went in, It was playing, as you can hear, and I scanned all around when I got in there, and you could continue to hear the music and see everything going on. And it was just a really unusual pagoda, one that was decorated in ways that I'd not seen before, and particularly had all these nagas surrounding it with attendants, holding and pulling on the nagas. Probably reminiscent of swirling the ocean of milk, which is one of the founding events of the creation, according to Khmer legend. But it was a curious place, and as I say, not a tourist within 5-10 kilometers of it. It was very engaging. So that was my final point, and you probably notice if my camera works any good that I got a lot of sun. My skin's starting to peel now, and it's getting kind of ragged because that was, I think I spent about 5 hours in the direct sun with almost no shade, and I hadn't even bothered to bring a hat at the time, which was a mistake, which I corrected on that last day. I bought a hat in the market on my way home. But that was very definitely not tourism, right? That was a different kind of experience altogether. You see, on that final day, you could say in some ways I was being a tourist. Obviously it's not where I live, and I was poking around taking photographs and so forth like a visitor. But I wasn't doing the standard things that everybody does, and I wasn't being led by somebody else. I was the one making the decisions. It's my bicycle, well, the resort's bicycle, but I mean, I was in charge of the bicycle. I was in charge of where to go, when to go, what to see, what to do, how long, and so forth. It was all up to me, and I was going to places where the normal visitors to the region just don't go. And the whole day I didn't see any foreigners whatsoever. I just saw local people, and rather curiously for Khmer people, they were interested in me. I mean, not like desperately interested, but a few people, when I was walking around and trying to find something, would say something to me like, "Oh, hello, who are you?" And I stopped certain places to buy something to drink, or sometimes to ask directions, and they would speak to me. I mean, it's just a very different experience to what I'm used to, and certainly different for them too, because they were looking at me thinking, gosh, here we are in the middle of the Kampot province countryside, and here's this guy with grey mutton chops and blue eyes. Like, what's he doing here? He doesn't belong here. But we'll find out. So that's, tourist versus not tourist travel. And that's kind of my point, I guess. So I hope you enjoyed the video. Please like, please subscribe, please tell your friends about my videos. And I'll be back next week doing something. I don't know what. I just got a whole roast duck for the Qingming festival, which is coming up. In fact, it will be the day that this video airs, April 5th. And have a good weekend.